What's up, everybody? This episode, we're actually going to take a deep dive into running the numbers on a rental property. So if you're interested in buying a rental property and you're looking at running the numbers on it, this is the episode for you. So Ray, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi. Dan let me out of my cave.
Yeah, Ray doesn't get out much, so we will bring him in on here because he's the numbers guy. He's really good at running numbers, and so let's get into the analysis.
Yeah, Dan's always bringing us deals and saying, "What about this? What about that?" And I always say, "Well, let's see what it looks like in the spreadsheet." So,
well, before we get to the spreadsheet, is there
Sure.
there's a high-level sniff test that you can do when you're looking at a potential rental property, right? So, what is that rule? How do you do it? How do you calculate it? Because you don't want to get into doing detailed analyses on every potential rental property you get because you're going to be spending tons of time on it. So what is a high-level, sniff test that you can use in general, rule of thumb, before you get in?
Very high level, we're talking about what's known as the 1% rule, which means you take 1% of the purchase price, and if your monthly rents add up to that, then it could be a good deal. So on a $100,000 property, if you're bringing in $1,000 a month, that seems like it might be a good deal. There's other rules of thumb. There's 2%. There's less than that. It really all depends on your market. So you kind of feel that out as you get into it. But for us, we're really not interested in anything that's going to work for our model unless it kind of gets at or near that 1%, or we can exceed it.
Exactly. So if you kind of use that 1% rule as an initial sniff test, and if you kind of pass that sniff test based on your market, based on your kind of requirements, then you can move on to the detailed analysis.
Exactly. Then you can get into the weeds.
Cool. So if you don't have access to MLS
Sure.
and you're looking for properties, what are some sites that you can use that, Zillow and
Realtor.com. Realtor.com.
Does Trulia still exist?
I think Zillow actually bought them, but nonetheless, still different domains.
So there's plenty of free options out there.
Are you talking about looking for properties?
Looking for properties. Identifying
comps for rentals.
No, identifying potential properties
Absolutely.
to purchase.
Anything that will syndicate or aggregate your local MLS feed, because obviously MLS is integrated into all of those sites, and sometimes there's delay issues or data issues, but nonetheless, it's pretty good.
Perfect. All right. So we've identified a property. So we're actually going to walk through a property that we recently ran the numbers on.
Yeah. This is a real property. This is a real example.
Real example. It's not something that we were going after. It's what, your mother's friend?
My mother-in-law.
Your aunt? Oh, your mother-in-law.
Yeah, my in-laws were looking at a place.
Looking to buy some rental property?
And I kind of kept them out of the danger zone on this one, so we can show you why what looks like a good deal on the surface may not be great.
Yeah, so we'll walk through it so you guys can follow along. And if you have any questions, hit us up in the comments below, and let's get into it. So we will bring up Zillow here and type in the address. So this property is actually in New Hampshire.
My neck of the woods.
Your neck of the woods. Live free or die.
Yeah, there it is.
Your neck of the woods too, guys, right? Exactly. So this is the property, 149 Blackwater Road in Somersworth, New Hampshire. It's a 1,393 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath single family, listed for $369,900.
Yeah.
It's actually just on the market. It actually looks pretty nice. The pictures here look pretty nice. Updated kitchen. Looks like they've done some work to it. So it doesn't look like it needs that much renovation, if any. The bathroom looks new. Yeah, it looks pretty nice.
Yep.
So let's jump into, so there's a couple options you can use for calculating or analyzing a deal, right? So you can create your own spreadsheet. We have our own spreadsheet, which we're going to walk through. There's spreadsheets available on biggerpockets.com. There's so many free spreadsheets that are available. Obviously they're all different. So,
they're all different and sort of all similar at the same time. So most of the ones that are free are going to capture like really high level stuff.
Yeah.
And once you kind of need to get into more of the weeds or do some more advanced analysis, you might need to pay for something or
tweak it or make
your
own.
Make it your own. Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into the spreadsheet that we use. And obviously, again, any questions, hit us up in the comments. So let's jump over to the spreadsheet. And we have 5 tabs at the bottom. We have the acquisition, the revenue, the expenses, financing, and then the overall pro forma, right? So we're going to enter the information here. The address is actually 149 Blackwater Road.
Yes, some of the details were changed to protect the innocent.
So we'll just put in the purchase.
And the purchase price, just to be clear, was an anticipated offer. So it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly what is listed. So in our case, we'll put the asking price to start, and then we'll put a number in that says, where does it need to be for it to start to make sense in case it is listed over a number that financially makes it a viable investment.
Yeah, so we'll start with the asking price, and then we can back into a number that will ultimately make sense, so you guys can see what the price actually needs to be to get that cash flow and cash on cash return for it to potentially work for, at least for us, and maybe you guys as well.
Yeah, or anybody else's mother-in-law.
Right. So jumping over to the revenue tab, we have annual income increase. So do you want to just explain what that means?
Yeah, and this is kind of more of an advanced function of the spreadsheet that we've, as you're seeing on screen here, is a little more dumbed down. But it basically says if you're going to do a multi-year analysis, how much do you expect the rents to grow? I think 1% is pretty, conservative, especially in today's exact market. But
it depends on the micro market as well, right?
Exactly. And, certain areas are going to appreciate more than others. But to be super conservative, which we like to do, then we just usually put 1 or 2%.
Yeah. So here under the unit configuration, obviously it's just a single family house. So we're going to get rid of all of this additional data. This is, if you have a multi-unit property like a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex, you can enter the various bedroom counts or unit configuration types here as well. So we'll just keep it with 1. And I believe when we saw over here, it was a 3-bed, 2-bath. So we will put in here 3-bed, 2-bath. And then we got to figure out what our monthly rent's going to be. So again, if you don't have access to your local MLS, a great site that we've used in the past to find out what average or median rents are in your market is rentometer.com.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll head over here and we can actually type in the address itself, 149 Blackwater Road, Somersworth. We can say the bedrooms is going to be 3-bed.
And I believe that site
1.5 or more bath
will give you high-level data, but if you really want the detailed data, you'll probably have to pay for some subscription.
Yeah.
So again, this is where having MLS or a connection to MLS is helpful.
Correct. So we'll go house duplex, and then we can do a search radius. We'll just do auto. And then we will hit analyze. And we will come up here and we will say that the average rent for a 3-bed, 1.5 or more bath in Somersworth, New Hampshire is $2,042 a month.
Okay.
And the median is $2,075. So we're kind of like right in their ballpark. So we'll put in, to be conservative, let's just put in 2,000.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Makes sense.
So we'll put in monthly rent of $2,000 a month. So you have your annual rent income of $24,000. Now, if there's any additional income, such as laundry income, parking income, or any other income, if you're charging tenants back if you're providing internet, you're charging back for internet, or you have a pet fee where it's potentially legal in your market, you can add that stuff in here as well. So, for this, because it's a single family, we'll just keep it easy, $2,000 a month. Obviously, laundry is going to be included, parking is going to be included. Everything else will be included. So we will keep that as 0. All right, so let's jump into the expenses tab. And so annual expense increase. What is your typical annual expense increase? Similar to
It's similar to the rent increase. You're usually looking at 1% a year.
Okay.
It's all going to depend.
Okay, so the first section is expenses paid as percent of revenue. So those are big items like maintenance and repairs, property management, reserves for future capex, and vacancy.
Right. And we can dive into each of those, but that's probably for
I guess the biggest thing that I think maybe people are something that someone might want to understand is the difference between maintenance and repairs and CapEx. What are the differences?
Yeah. So maintenance and repairs are things that you kind of expect to have happen or break each, year, whereas CapEx is something that you usually plan for, something major like a new roof or siding or windows.
So big ticket items.
Big ticket items, yeah.
Gotcha.
But a lot of people don't put money aside for that, so that's why we find it important to do so.
Gotcha. So as far as percentages of your gross monthly rent for each of those, so maintenance and repairs on average, what would you say, 5 to 10% depending on?
Yeah, it's going to depend on property type and condition, but
Condition.
yeah, 5 to 10%.
So we'll say 7 on average for this one. Property management, if you're hiring a property manager, what are you typically looking to pay of the gross monthly rent?
Sure. That's going to vary on the property type as well. For a single family, it'll probably be high single digits, so
8 to 10%.
8 to 10.
Okay. And then future CapEx, we'll put 5% for that. And then vacancy, you said nationwide
Usually
vacancy.
3 to 5%.
Yeah.
And going back to that revenue part that we were talking about earlier, it is 3 to 5% as well. So, our 1 or 2% that we put in there is super conservative for rent growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, just that section alone, 25% of your gross monthly rent is already gone from
Off the
that.
top.
Yep, right off the top. So now we'll move down to expenses paid annually. So those are things like insurance, LLC filing fees for your particular state, property taxes, tax prep. Insurance obviously is going to vary depending on the type of property, where it's located, if it's sprinkled, if it's not. So, you're going to have to check in with a local insurance agent on that. But for this particular property, we're going to put $1,000.
Right. A good rule of thumb is that if you own a house now and you're living in it, it's going to be more expensive than whatever you're paying because non-owner occupied always pays more.
Exactly. And then LLC filing fees. What are the filing fees in New Hampshire?
125, I want to say.
Okay, so we'll put 125. And then as far as taxes, Zillow or Realtor.com should give you that information. So we'll go over here back to Zillow, and we will go down here, and we will. Here we go. Property tax. So 2020 taxes were $62.47.
Yeah, and that's something that you can easily verify with the assessor's office and the assessor's database. Most places have that info online. Just check and see what the rates are and just make sure that's accurate because that data can definitely be out of date.
It can. That's for 2020. So
right.
So 2021 data is not up there yet.
Yeah.
All right. So now tax prep. Now, if you have an accountant that is going to be preparing your taxes annually, you'll usually put in a price here. In this case, we probably just won't. I don't know what you typically would pay annually for tax prep for a particular property for a single family.
Probably not too much.
Yeah. So we'll leave it at 0 for now.
Yeah.
So that
200
$200.
Yeah, $200, $250. I don't know.
So that section is 30% of your gross. So you're already at
55%
of your rent.
2,000 is just
gone.
So I have less than $1,000.
Less than $1,000 left.
What are we paying for this thing?
$369.
Well, I already know off the top of my head that's not going to work.
So now we're going to the rest of the expenses. So these could be anything like if you're paying for utilities, if you're paying for snow removal, if you're paying for, pest control, advertising, cleaning, all of that stuff falls into this section.
Right. These are your operational expenses that have nothing to do with your maintenance and repair. Because I've also seen people just bundle all of that into M&R and say, oh, well, just expenses in general will be 10%.
Yeah.
But I find that to be not a good method at all.
No. But so, for instance, in a single family, though, a lot of these expenses are going to be on the tenant. Like water is going to be on the tenant. You're probably going to have the tenant deal with snow removal on their own.
Yep.
Landscaping. What about landscaping? Is that something that you like? Are they responsible for mowing the lawn for a single family?
Yeah, I think they are.
Okay.
In some cases, if you write the lease that way, that's important. Make sure your lease says who's responsible for what.
Yep.
But I would make the tenant responsible for it.
Taking out the trash. That's
right.
That's all on them. So most of this stuff is going to be 0, with probably the exception of maybe some pest control if they have pests or an issue. So maybe we'll put in like $75.
Or you just toss it into the miscellaneous kind of catch all.
That's
down
true.
there.
So we'll just say maybe $100 a month for miscellaneous.
Yep.
So we'll put 0.
The second you go above a single family, there's lots of common expenses and things you can't ask the tenants to do.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's where the expenses can start to add up.
Yeah, like if the water's not sub-metered, you're going to be responsible for the water, all
right.
that stuff. So we'll put so that's only 5%. So going down to the bottom here, our total expenses as a percentage of the gross monthly rent. Mm-hmm. What do you think it is?
As a percentage?
Yeah.
We're probably at like 65%.
60%.
60.
Just over 60%. Not bad. All right, let's go over to the financing tab. So we're paying $369.9 for the house. The amount to finance, typically when you're buying an investment property, a bank or a lender is going to ask for either 20 or 25% down, probably. So in this case, we'll basically just say we're going to put 20% down. Say we're going to put 20% down on the. I am not good at spreadsheets. Spreadsheet man. All right, $295,920.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. So loan to value 80%.
So it sounds like we had to come up with like almost $100,000.
Yes, 77,000.
And there's other closing costs and things like that.
Yeah, other closing costs.
We're just going to keep it simple.
Keep it simple. So average interest rate on an investment property, interest has gone up. We'll say 4%.
All relative. Put 4 for now.
Yep.
Keep it simple. The spreadsheet also, the one that we're showing here is ours, and we've kind of built in like its own calculated amortization table. So that's all happening behind the scenes when Dan's filling this out. FYI.
Yes, auto calculations on the back end.
There's also mortgage calculator websites, so if you don't have the luxury of something built in, you can just type in your purchase price, your down payment, and the amortization info, and it'll give you the monthly payment.
Yep. So a great site, mortgagecalculator.org. You can just head over there. You can type in your down payment amount. You can type in your interest rate. You can type in your term, all that stuff, and it will spit out total monthly payments, all that fun stuff. They have amortization schedules and tables built in here. So if you head over to there, you can get all that information free. And then you can plug it into whatever spreadsheet you're using. So lender origination, most lenders will charge some type of origination fee to underwrite the loan. It's usually like 0.5% to a point. So on a single family.
Yeah, and it's going to include, you could even make this field include just typical closing costs. So sometimes people will say rule of thumb is like 2 to 4% of the purchase price goes to the closing costs or origination and the whole bundle.
Yeah.
So we'll put in like 2%.
We'll put 2%. And then your loan term, we'll do 30 years.
30 years.
30-year fixed mortgage, and your amortization is also 30 years. So going down, so your total cash required to close this property for your down payment, closing costs, origination
everything
fees,
the bank's not paying for.
all that stuff is $80,000.
Okay.
On the dot.
All right. 80,000.
So you need to bring the 80,000.
What are we bringing in every month?
We are bringing in $2,000 a month.
No. That's before all the expenses. What are
gross.
What are we bringing in to pay for this
let's
thing?
go over to the final tab, which is pro forma.
This is always my favorite part. It's like, did I do everything right? How does it look? It's the big reveal.
So breaking down the numbers here, our annual revenue.
Yes, because we displayed annually rather than monthly. Yeah.
Annual revenue, $24,000 a year.
Yep.
Annual operating expenses, $14,572 a year.
Okay.
So that leaves your net operating income as $9,428 a year. Now you got to take out your debt service, so all of your principal, interest, all that stuff. $16,953 a year. So that leaves you a pre-tax cash flow of negative $7,525 a year. So you are.
But it sounded like such a good deal, and the agent told me it was a great deal. No offense to the agent.
So you're basically losing $627 a month, which is a negative 9.41%.
But I'm building equity through appreciation,
of course,
which constantly goes up.
So quickly, before we wrap up, what does the price need to be? What do you need to buy the house for to make the numbers work? Right. So let's go back to our acquisition.
This is where we start tweaking.
This is where we start tweaking stuff. All the other stuff, like the expenses, you can't. That stuff you can't change that stuff. That stuff is kind of fixed costs, right?
Yeah. And
the only thing that you can adjust is the purchase price.
Right. And I've even seen some situations where you may not even want to do any expenses as percentage of revenue because expenses are just kind of like a flat per unit amount. So
Yeah.
I've seen per unit also, just to clarify.
So let's go down and let's say we offer $300,000 for the property. Let's see how that adjusts things here. So we go back over to the pro forma.
I bet they're super motivated on that offer too. All cash.
Still negative. We're still
negative?
We're still losing $360 a month.
So that 1% rule is really important because, as Dan was saying, you know, $2,000 on an almost $400,000 house, that's 0.5%.
Yeah.
And Dan and I already, you know, we're simplifying this whole exercise here, but we would immediately just not even look at that.
Yeah. So let's go back. Let's go down to $250,000 for the house.
Now we're getting closer to 1%.
Now we're getting closer to 1%. So where does that leave us? We're still a little bit in the hole. We're losing $169 a month at $250,000 purchase
Crazy.
price. Crazy. So let's go down to $200,000. See what that leaves us with. Now we're barely cash flow positive.
It's because we've got some pretty high percentages for the fact that
Taxes.
we're only operating one unit.
Yep. So monthly cash flow, $22 a month.
Yeah, that's not worth it.
Not worth it. Let's go back to, so let's actually just go back to rent-a-meter for a second. Because the median is, so the 75th percentile is only 2,100. So the rent in this area is not, you can't really, there's not a lot of upside in rent, it seems, in this town or
This market.
or this market. So we can't really do that based on, we can't really go up in rent based on the quality of the building. So,
And if there wasn't enough data there, then at that point we'd probably reach out to an agent, or
Yep.
if we have MLS access ourselves, we'll dive in that way and make sure that those numbers are right. Because again, Rentometer I think pulls from lots of different sources.
so now we're starting to look at $150,000 purchase price, which is more than 50% less than what they're asking.
So realistic.
You're starting to get into where you need to be. You're making $213 a month in monthly cash flow, and your cash on cash return is 7.75%.
There you go.
So that's not terrible.
Not terrible.
What-
Again, depending on your outlay, which bleeds into your question, right?
Right. So what do we typically like to see from a monthly cash flow or cash on cash return standpoint?
Oof, such a loaded question. Very high level. We like to see whatever has been put into the property to acquire it, ideally to be brought back in some value add manner within 2 to 3 years. But prior to that,
That's like
or
a
if-
30% cash on cash return.
it's crazy. You're not going to find it. So what we do is we look at maybe 20% as a good basis, but 20% is still wild.
20% is still pretty good. I mean, you're making all of your money back that you're investing into the property in 5 years.
In 5 years.
So, I mean, it is what it is. So that's kind of the general overview of running the numbers on a rental property. If you have any questions, definitely hit us up in the comments below. If you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. We're going to have a ton of future videos covering other aspects. We're going to cover flipping, running the numbers on a flip or a development project as well later on. You'll see more of Ray.
All right.
And can't wait to see you on the next one.